Welcome to the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. I'm Kevin C. Neese.
And I'm Tim Van Orden, and this is Episode 8, Discovery Debriefing. We'll be starting off with some news about Star Trek Prodigy, and then discussing Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 10, No Small Parts.
And then we'll have an audience question right after our main story, taking the last look at Seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery before we get started next week on Season 3. Come and join us. Who's starting? I let you start last week, and now you're like wanting to jump in. What are we gonna say?
So what's up on the news front?
Oh well, that's a lame lead-in.
Hey, I'm tired. Give me some slack.
That's okay. I
used up all my energy trying to say Discovery Debriefing.
Discovery Debriefing. I thought that was easier to say than the proposed title of the episode, which was New Trek, True Trek.
Yeah, that one was going to be... There's no way I was getting through that.
The longer version of which I will remind you almost locked me into was New Trek, True Trek, Discovery Season 2 Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, speaking of news Trek.
News Trek. Oh, smooth. Smooth as buttery silk.
Smooth as an android's bottom.
Sure. I wouldn't know.
Your loss.
Oh, it's gonna be a long episode. Yeah, so new Trek. New news. New news. New news on the Prodigy front. It's funny because like two different people were like, this week were like, hey, you've got to talk about this on the podcast, and one of them was you. But we like to surprise each other with the news items that we bring to the table. But this week we're not. It's the biggest news in Star Trek right now that Kate Mulgrew is coming back as Kathryn Janeway for Star Trek Prodigy, and I'm flipping excited about it.
I am too. I am really stoked to see some more Janeway. I definitely came to have a greater appreciation of her the last time I ran through Voyager, so I am excited to see what they're going to do with the character.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a tiny little concern.
Yeah.
They're really starting to lean hard on that nostalgia factor.
That's true.
I've mentioned this a few times before, and I'm worried that all this nostalgia stuff is going to make for a difficult entry point for newer fans.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, there's two ways to look at it. One is nostalgia, and two is continuing the story of a character. So, like, I came to Star Trek through Next Generation and the original crew movies. I didn't really see the original series, much of it all, before I started watching the movies. So, the characters as they appear in the movies were how I was introduced to the characters from the original series.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that didn't, obviously that's meant to be nostalgic for the people who love the original series.
Yeah, no, but it's on a smaller scale. Like when you're talking about the original series films, mm-hmm. or the old scientist films, they're like, and you're looking at what do I gotta, if you, for some reason you're thinking, what do I gotta watch before this to get into this? All you've got are 3 seasons of TOS, right? But now if you look at this and someone thinks, okay, this Janeway character was in Voyager, and before Voyager they had Deep Space Nine and TNG and TOS, and there was an animated series. Does that relate to this animated series? And I don't know, I feel like it's just starting to make it a little too, we need some fresh blood, I like the new people on Discovery, the new people in Lower Decks. I love Janeway. I absolutely love Janeway. I really am looking forward to seeing more of her character, because she's a fascinating character. And I saw something about, like, when Voyager came out, mm-hmm. she had to be perfect,
right?
Because of all the expected criticism that was going to come her way, and now she gets to be more fully flawed and fleshed out and fuller. Not that she didn't do an amazing job with what she had to create a full character, but she's going to be better now. Well, so I'm excited to see more Janeway.
I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, that it's not as though these characters are inaccessible if you didn't know them before. And I think that when you bring back a legacy character, it does two things. One is it does have that nostalgia factor for the characters who know, people who know who these characters are. Mm-hmm. And then two, for those who don't, it introduces them to the character and they say, oh, that's interesting. And they might go back and watch what else that character's been in.
Okay.
But if you do it right, then you don't have to have a lot of insider knowledge.
Do we know who's behind the Prodigy? Is that Kurtzman or McMahon?
Kurtzman is involved in all Star Trek to one degree or another at this point. He is
really okay.
Well, I mean, he's the Rick Berman. He's the.
I didn't realize he had anything to do with Lower Decks.
Yeah, he's like an executive producer, but I mean, in the same way, but he's not like really closely involved in that series, from what I can tell. Right? He's more closely involved in Discovery.
Sure.
And Picard, but even at that, I think he's more involved in Discovery than he is in Picard, as far as I can see. But then there's so much I don't know about the way Star Trek works right now. But he is the Rick Berman. So if it's Star Trek right now, it's because Alex Kurtzman is okaying it or greenlighting, whatever it is. Not greenlighting it, but Alex Kurtzman is making sure it happens. He's the one who plans how Star Trek goes. So in that respect, and to that degree, Alex Kurtzman is involved in what's the thing called? Prodigy. I'm running. There's so much Star Trek, I can't remember all the names anymore. But Prodigy is kind of in the vein of Lower Decks. I feel like its creators have their own vision for it, and they're doing their thing, and that's really what Kurtzman wants to do. And I like that. And we'll talk about that a little more as we talk about seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery, because I'm going to start getting into stuff if we lay on that.
Sure.
So anyway.
Okay.
Good. But
cool.
That's the Star Trek news. Oh, I do have one bit of Star Trek news though about Doug Jones.
Oh.
And you know what this is too.
I do know what this
is. I want to impress everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, last week we had an episode on Saru. And I tweeted, and when I was doing, it was late at night, and I was scheduling all my tweets and all my Facebook posts and everything for the episode, like I do, because I love you people, and I wanted to make sure that you get these episodes every week. So I work hard at this stuff. Anyway, I was doing that, and I just thought I'm just gonna tag Doug Jones in this tweet, and I said, I wonder what @Doug Jones actor would think about this, and he liked my tweet. Doug Jones liked my tweet.
Nice.
Now, I don't know if he went and listened to the episode. He certainly didn't, he didn't DM me. We're not best buds right now. I mean, that's around the corner, but I mean,
sure,
not yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
You take it a step at a time. But he liked my tweet. Then I thanked him for liking the tweet, and he liked that tweet. I have now been liked twice by Doug Jones. And
that's brilliant.
I can't contain myself.
That's brilliant.
It's beautiful.
Oh.
Makes me so happy.
That's awesome. Very good.
All right, so I did want to mention a couple of things before we go on that are not exactly news, but they're sort of like things. Number one is, last week we talked about therapy and mental health. I mean, that had come up in Lower Decks. And by the way, those of you who communicate with me during the week, thank you so much for getting in touch about that episode. And we'll probably do more about mental health in Star Trek. And mental health in general, but I did not know that last week was Mental Health Week. Like the week starting with our episode was Mental Health Week, and I wonder if it was planned with Lower Decks to have that as a topic for their episode, but it was Mental Health Week last week, so that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
And but don't wait for Mental Health Week to think about your mental health, because it's important. Also, the other thing that a lot of you have been talking to me about during the week is where we talked about disability in Star Trek, and I think we can go even further with that theme at some point too. If you guys want to hear an episode where we talk about that, there's
that TNG episode with Worf where he gets the
back injury. There's all kinds. But
you
know what? A friend of mine said, and another friend mentioned the same thing, like that. when they were listening to the thing about disabilities, they wanted to scream at the podcast, Jordy.
Oh my! Oh yeah!
Like you were even talking about glasses and seeing.
Yeah, well, and that's what my wife was saying. We talked about it briefly, and she mentioned, there are different levels of disabilities. Like everybody with a pair of eyeglasses has the disability. It's just that society has accepted that and accommodated it.
Yeah, no, I said that. Maybe she said it too. I don't know.
But, oh yeah, she said it too. I don't listen to you. She said
okay, all right, that's cool. Hey, between the two of us, you should listen to her. Yeah, but I think that's interesting because there's a certain degree to which we don't think about Geordie's disability. I thought that was interesting. Just that his disability is accommodated, even though we talk about it, we still. I mean, it slipped my mind. So anyway, also just a little bit of Star Trek news that nobody else is going to care about, but in a I think it was a New York Times crossword puzzle, sometime in the past week or so. One of the clues was villainous title in science fiction. And I don't know what the answer was, but I started thinking like a Star Trek nerd, and one of the things I actually tried was Admiral. Because a villainous title, like in Star Trek, Admiral, because there's always the Badmiral, there's always the Admiral who's villainous.
See, this is why I need a soundboard so I can play the cricket chirp.
Let's move on, shall we? Oh boy, man. I've been holding on to that for a week.
Oh, maybe that's why it was so stale.
Exactly. Oh wow. Speaking of stale, we got specific compliments on your Saru fart joke last week. So congratulations.
Maybe that's why he likes the episode, or maybe that's why he didn't respond.
Maybe so. Yeah, you turned Doug Jones off. Thanks a lot. So what'd you think of Lower Decks this week, huh?
They've had better.
Are you serious?
No, of course I'm not serious. That was a great episode. I had to stop it and rewind it and watch that scene again.
Which scene?
Which scene.
Oh, with Will.
With the Titan, yes.
Yeah, the Titan
showing up.
And the great thing is, I don't think we've ever seen the Titan before, so it's cool.
It was cool. It's a good looking ship.
Yeah, it's a good looking ship. Yeah.
I can't wait to see that in Star Trek Online if it's not already.
Ooh, hey, yeah, that's pretty cool.
That'd be cool. Yeah. But it was awesome. It was awesome, of course, to hear Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis, yes,
both there.
Yeah,
boy,
that was.
I could not get past Will and Deanna. I could not get to the actor names there for a moment. But yeah, that was great. That was fantastic. And I had actually read that they were showing up in this episode, and I'd completely forgotten. So it was.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful. What'd you think about the death of the Bajoran security officer, though?
I wonder if it was a nod to Skin of Evil. Killing off the
good call.
Security chief,
security officer. Except he actually died for something. Although I don't know that he had to. He was like, I guess maybe the shuttlecraft couldn't get out under its own power.
Yeah, that was the impression I got. He had to push it out of the.
But then he pulled Rutherford's cybernetic implant off, which I mean,
because it was like virusy and
right.
About to blow him up.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I guess his implant would have blown up too.
Yeah,
that's true. Oh wow, because Badgie was in it. Man, Badgie's evil.
Badgie is nasty.
Badgie is awful. Badgie is bad.
Badgie's going to be Badgie's going to end up being the overarching villain of the entire series.
He's going to turn out to be Q.
I bet you no. Badgie is what causes the burn in Discovery.
Causes the right, exactly. There you go. Perfect. Oh man. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it was a good episode. I enjoyed it. I don't know. It's funny because I didn't expect the ending with Boimler accepting a promotion to the Titan. I didn't expect that at all, and that was kind of cool. Like, was it cool?
Yeah, I liked it just because it means we're going to get more time on the Titan.
I guess so. All right. So you're just being selfish about it. So that's cool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. That fits. That fits your MO. But yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of times you'll enjoy things in TVs and movies just because it gives you more of what you want, whether it's anything I think is good for the story or not. But all right. But anyway, which is okay. I mean, that's totally fine. I want more. I want more on the Titan too. I mean, that's the thing. I was kind of excited about that. But at the same time, I felt like, man, I don't know if man, he actually did that. Sheesh, that was harsh. I don't know. I felt harsh toward Mariner. So,
well, maybe it wasn't intentional. Like, he said he applies for everything and never gets them.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, so maybe this was just a complete surprise. Maybe Riker did it because he thought he was helping Mariner out.
Well, I can believe all of that, but like his whole thing was he didn't want Mariner to get a promotion because he applied but didn't think he would get it. But then he didn't want Mariner to get it,
right? Because
he didn't want to lose her. But then when it's his promotion, he doesn't mind losing her. I don't know. It's like that's kind of cold.
Well, he has a character flaw.
I guess so. I don't know.
Not my track.
Oh my gosh! Are you trying to segue us already?
No. I'm just throwing that out there. Shots fired. Torpedoes fired.
Yeah, torpedoes. Oh man.
Phasers on stun. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. I loved that they brought in the theme. I think it's First Contact that they brought in when the Titan was showed up. I think that was the First Contact music.
You mean the other Enterprise?
The other Enterprise, right? Right. But no, I mean it's because they did the theme, right? But then there's this ending, like that ending is from I think it's First Contact.
I think it might be Insurrection.
Is it Insurrection? It might be
idea.
Insurrection. It's either First Contact or Insurrection. I'm pretty sure. I know it's a Goldsmith score. But anyway, I listen to those so much that I forget which is which because I'm writing while I'm listening. So, but anyway, yeah. So I don't know if do we have anything interesting to say about this episode though?
So I was, I walked away from the end of the episode really enjoying it. Mm-hmm. Like I think I enjoyed this episode more than any other episode. But it occurs to me this doesn't feel very. Like it's really doing a good job of starting to earn the first two letters in the title. I'm not so sure it's earning its keep with the last two.
Well, and there's a balance, and I think that's okay. I think it's okay that some episodes are more Star Trek episodes and some episodes, like on a normal series, right? Like in Deep Space Nine, you'd have these intense episodes about the Dominion War or whatever. And then you'd have like Looking for Parmok in All the Wrong Places or Prophet and Lace or something like that, and it would be this goofball episode. And
it just feels like these guys they're on the bridge too much. They're too important to the success of the ship, and that's not what I expect out of Lower Decks.
I see what you're saying. I see. You're not talking about the funny part necessarily, because that's what I was thinking. Like it's okay for them, like other series, it's okay to occasionally have a funny episode. For these guys, it's okay to occasionally have a pretty serious episode.
That's fine. I have no problem with the altering tone. I don't feel like they're being very lower decky.
Wow, we both said Lower Decky at the same time.
Get out of my head.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. That's, we had Mariner on the captain's chair today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're not wrong about that. Yeah.
No, but anyway, I still enjoy it.
Yeah, me too.
It's good. It's a lot of fun. When Ransom was asking Troy if she could hook him up with someone.
Oh, right.
Because I can make that work for me.
Right.
Yeah, Ransom was great.
And Peanut Hamper.
I was excited to see Peanut Hamper, but I was a little disappointed in her character arc.
Her attitude. She was awful. That was bad. I was like, I love Peanut Hamper. Why
But
did she turn out to be awful?
when you think about it, that was exactly the sort of thing they asked of her that the exocomps were being asked to do in that first episode.
Exactly,
right?
in quality of life, like that was the whole thing, and the let's ask the episode, because that's the bargain that Data and Riker strike in that episode. Is like Riker's like, okay, look, I won't force the exocomps to do this, but what if we can ask them? Will you release the transporter lockout if they agree to do this? He's like, yes. So then they go and do it, and so there was every possibility that they could say no, and it's kind of like, what if they did say no? and so that was pretty. So that was interesting. What if an exocomp blew you off? Would you still like them so much? It's like, but that's, we think of like, oh, well, they're a new life form and all that, and we glory at the new life form. But what if the new life form turns out to kind of be a jerk?
Like Q.
Like Q, right? Exactly. But not a villain, just a jerk. It's one thing when the new life form comes at us and wants to kill us. It's another thing when the new life form was like, hi, I'm wonderful, and I want to be your friend, and then like, too bad, so sad, go tell your granddad, and flies off. So yeah, that was interesting.
So
yeah, go ahead.
No,
what?
Go ahead. What?
So this episode of Lower Decks also calls back to the Return of the Archons, which, if you have read my book, I use as kind of the archetype for how the original series deals with religion. And so it's a very near and dear episode to me. But they go back to the planet and the people, Beta 3, and the people have re-embraced Landru, the computer who was ruling them, as their god.
Right.
What did you think of that?
At the time, I just thought it was a clever, funny nod. Oh, haha, another fan service nostalgia joke. But thinking about it now, it is something that you have to be aware of in religion. Of like, sure, you may move past a false idol or a false leader, but you still got to be vigilant, because it kind of they cycle through. They come and they go. It is something you have to be wary of. It is something you have to be vigilant of.
It's so easy to fall back into an old pattern or an old habit.
Right.
And it's not, it works not just on the religious level, but it does work on the religious level. It works on so many levels where we can buy into something and we have to move away from it. And I think it's just interesting, just the idea that they're introducing here, that, we could change things on a planet and then go back and find that things have changed back. And that's possible. It's a thing that happens because people are creatures of habit. And, this one momentous event that occurs in the history of a planet, something else might change later on down the line. And
he was really convincing.
He was really convincing, right? I found that fascinating. I thought it was really cool. Just a nice little, first, like you said, nod to the series, but also the of all the contraband equipment that Mariner gets out.
Yes, I
you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I know that I want some Starfleet crayons.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That's what I want.
All right, so but the helmet, did you see the helmet with the big red light on it?
Yes. I got a big chuckle out of that.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
That was clever.
For those who don't know, it's just a little throwback to a 1960s toy that was made into a Star Trek toy that wasn't originally a Star Trek toy, and it's legendary because
it is now canon.
Red light on it. It's now canon. That's awesome. So now it is a Star Trek toy. It's great. It re-legitimized.
I love that half of that. I love that half of that contraband came from Riker.
Yes, that was great. So yeah, it was great to see the callback to Return of the Archons, and I do think, like a lot of things in Lower Decks, it was a joke, but it still actually is an interesting idea, and I'd love to see more of that explored. Well, we saw it with Khan, the Space Seed, and Star Trek 2. Yeah, and see what a great story was mined in. So we should maybe do it more.
And and the Packlids.
The Packlids, same kind of thing.
Yeah,
exactly. Where we just kind of moved on. Well, and of course that was part of it. That was a thematic element of the episode. We just kind of moved on. But yeah, if the Packlids continue on their logical progression, that's kind of a good idea of where they would end up. So I think that was really cool. Yeah, very good. I remember watching Deep Space Nine and seeing a Pac-Led hanging out on the promenade, and I was like, "What is that dude doing there? Why are there Pac-Leds on the promenade? They do not need to be here. They're too dangerous." So yeah, I enjoyed the episode. It was good. It makes me want a season 2 for sure. I'm interested. I want to see what happens.
I was wondering the whole episode, like once the Cerritos started getting wrecked, I was wondering if they were like, because I knew that Boimler was going to transfer off, and then
Really?
yeah, I had just read that. I had read a spoiler about that.
Okay,
so when Mariner is applying for, what was the ship she was applying for?
The ship.
In the beginning, the transfer, the promotion.
Yeah, the ship. I don't remember the name.
I thought it was okay. When she was applying for that ship, I was starting to think, I wonder if they're gonna like split them up and then just do a new thing every season. I mean,
yeah. Ooh,
but then they kind of brought them all back together at the end there and sent Boimler off and set him up in a way that he's clearly going to have a comeuppance and a moment of hubris and have to go back to the Titan or to the Cerritos and
maybe. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We shall.
We'll see. So anyway, yeah. I mean, that might be part of the arc of Lower Decks. Maybe it's watching characters grow out of the Lower Decks. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. All right. So shall we get into our main story here?
Let's do it.
So the main story tonight is a little bit this episode, I should say. Who knows when you're listening to this? The main story is a little bit open because we just really felt like we wanted to dive into things that were kind of left hanging. There's so much in seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery. And there's so much we haven't gotten to because we've spent time on what we spent time on just based on what was interesting to us. But there's so much. I mean, characters and stories and all that kind of thing. But the thing you were sort of teasing earlier was not my Trek. So so mention not my Trek.
Not my Trek. I don't know if it's a hashtag or a popular phrase or whatever. I just know that there's a lot of people that don't like the tone and the color of it and the characters and just a lot of people feel like it's not a good representation of Star Trek. And right. I feel like a lot of those people, they're entitled to their opinion, even if it's wrong. But I feel like they haven't looked at it deeply enough.
Well, I can definitely understand people being put off by the series.
I mean, I was one of them for a while. I watched the first 3 or 4 episodes, and I'm like, no, not my Trek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I agree with you that there's more to it, and this is the thing that I was going to talk about Kurtzman earlier, that, I was reading a quotation from him, which I had read before, but which I thought was interesting. And he's like, I think, that I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he says, I kind of think of Star Trek like a crayon box. There's all kinds of different colors of crayons in the box, but they're all in the same box, Right. And I thought, well, that's really cool. And I've talked with friends too who are like, and he mentioned something about this too. Is like some people might like some series, some people might like only one, some people might like all of them, but they can take or leave whatever they want. And I think that's a lot better way to look at it and to think about it. Because I think fans have tended to think of Star Trek as a monolith. And so when something new, because generally it has been, there's one series on the air, and then there's another series on the air, and the closest we got to anything like this was when we had, Deep Space Nine and Voyager on at the same time. But we tend to think, okay, well, this is the new Star Trek, and so Star Trek is going in this direction, Star Trek's going to be this. So people get upset about the Kelvin timeline or whatever. And what Kurtzman is saying is what he's trying to do is diversify it in such a way that there's different kinds of Star Trek going in different directions and doing different things, and that are going to appeal to different people. And it's okay if one Star Trek doesn't appeal to you. You know, that's and in a certain sense, that is not your Trek,
right?
You know, like, okay,
sure.
So this isn't your Trek, so go find a Trek. The idea behind that, not my Trek, I liken this. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, go for it. Go ahead.
I liken this to, like, if it's not mine, then it's not true. You know, if it's not my Trek, if it's not what I want to see in Star Trek, then it's bad Star Trek.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, though, is they're coming at it from the angle of they don't feel like it's philosophically Trek, you know?
Right.
Which like,
is just... Go ahead.
They're looking at the quote unquote grim dark nature of Discovery, and how it's not everybody is happy hunky-dory with each other, and saying that it's left the philosophy of Star Trek behind. I keep going back to this conversation I had with a coworker where he said Star Trek is supposed to be about humanity has bettered themselves, and how do we handle when we encounter other species, other civilizations that haven't attained our level of enlightenment yet.
Right. But what Star Trek has been saying, I think, progressively, particularly after the death of Gene Roddenberry, but even before then, and even in the original series at times, it's, and particularly with Deep Space Nine, is that we can have the most perfect society, right? But humanity is still humanity. And humanity is still broken and still flawed. Even in like Return of the Archons, when Kirk is talking to the lieutenant down on the planet, you know, and he's saying, well, a couple of fights have broken out, you know, and there's some, you know, unrest and whatever. And he's like, you know, it's not pretty, but it's human, you know. And even then there was that idea that and like Cisco says in I think it's Way of the Warrior, but he says, you know, the problem with Starfleet is Earth. You know, they've been on Earth so long and everything's perfect over there. They look out the window and it's paradise, and it's hard to remember that it's not paradise everywhere. But there's something also about Deep Space Nine that says that there's something we carry with us, right, in the human heart. We can have the most perfect society, but human hearts can still be corrupted. Human hearts can still be, and I think that the arrogance of the idea that, like, you know, we've evolved and we're elevated, you know, that's undercut even in First Contact, you know, when Lily is getting angry with Jean-Luc, when he's talking about, you know, in my century we've evolved beyond the need for revenge, you know. And you know, so Star Trek has been saying that and continues to say that and I've said before too that I feel like if we can go to really dark places and really bad stuff can happen and things can get murky and hard to sort out, you know, where that's part of the disorientation, I guess, that goes on in Discovery when we don't have a trustworthy captain. You know, we don't know where to look for guidance. We don't know where to look for truth and for hope, but we still find hope. You know, at the end of it, we still find hope, and we still find goodness, and we still find those things that matter to us and that we're there for. And Burnham can give that speech about what Star Trek is, and it's still true, even after everything, particularly after everything we've been through. And the fact that we've been able to push through it, and that's a hopeful story. So, I just think people maybe wanting things to be a little too simplistic. I don't know.
And I think Star Trek, more than just trying to portray a more hopeful version of our society, of humanity, is also about pointing a lens or a microscope back at where we are during that iteration. If you look at a lot of the morality stuff in TOS, it's, you know, different, you've got Chekhov and Sulu representing these different national divisions are no more. You've got, they encounter the race of the half black, half white, and the half white, half black people. And they're like, what's going on here?
Right. Right.
And then TNG gets into different issues in Deep Space Nine. And then now up in Discovery, we're looking at, we're in this time period where everything is so dark and frustrating and just disorienting and scary. And we're like looking back at all of our people who we thought were our heroes. And we're like, oh, wow, this guy was a slaveholder. And this guy was like a genocidal maniac. And
right.
So
right.
it's reflecting. Discovery is like, it does still have that hope in there that, because Burnham wouldn't have kept going if she didn't have that hope. I don't think once Battle of the Binary Stars happened, and you could see she lost it for a little bit, but it was rekindled. So there is hope there. And I think that it's this iteration of Star Trek is just showing us what it's like when we realize that, the shoulders we've been standing on this whole time weren't all shining beacons of virtue. They weren't paragons of virtue. But at the same time, you still have people like Pike, who I loved. And I don't know if she was saying it just to placate him, but when the Admiral told him that they kept him away from all of the fighting, because if the Federation was defeated, they needed someone like him still alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And Pike is that. Pike is that captain you can trust. That trustworthy captain that we did not have for all of the first season, right?
Right.
And I think having that gave us such hope that again, that so people like this still exist in the world, and perhaps we can look at somebody like that and know even more that they're trustworthy, because we know that it's possible for people with that rank, to be untrustworthy. Like that apparently bad joke I make it at the top of the episode about Admiral being the title of a villain. That's a good thing. That's a beautiful, it's good to have both in a series. It's good to have, and like you say, Star Trek always addresses the time in which it's made. And we do live in very disorienting times. We live in very, in times where things we used to be able to trust in crumble from beneath our feet. And it's hard to find our bearings. I mean, even if your bearing is Jesus, right? I mean, the Christian culture in our country is so marred and fractured and broken and mired in political gamesmanship, and there's so much corruption and greed and abuse, and oh man, it's just revolting to look around a lot of the air quotes Christian world today, the church world today. And one of the things that has grown my faith was, I was just thinking yesterday, actually, I grew up in Southern Baptist world, an evangelical subculture, firmly entrenched in evangelical subculture. And at a certain point, about 20 odd years ago, I started walking away from it. I started moving away from that culture, from the church that I was a part of most of my life. And, I quit my job at the bookstore and all that kind of stuff. And having to reorient myself, and to find a grounding for my faith that wasn't in these institutions that I was starting to distrust, and this system of sort of religious governance that I was starting to distrust, and all of that has grown my faith and helped me own my faith. But at the same time, I feel like I have my faith and I own my faith the way I did because of the evangelical subculture in which I grew up. So it was this weird transition where the thing that rooted me then becomes something I need to leave behind in order to find my roots again, not in the evangelical subculture, but in Jesus, right? And so it's like we were saying, with Not My Trek, it just reminds me of this paper I went to hear in college at my Christian university that I went to. But this paper that I went to hear, and it was on the Passion of the Christ when it was new. And this guy was talking about the film, and he said, the thought that I carried, when I was watching this in the movie was, that's not my Jesus. And the implication in what he was saying of that's not my Jesus was basically, that's not the real Jesus. That's not the true Jesus, because my Jesus is the real Jesus. And, that's one of the things in my studies of Jesus films and looking at all these different ways that Jesus is portrayed and all these different ways that people try to understand Jesus from all these different angles. It helps me to realize that we all have different perspectives, and that's a good thing, and that I shouldn't cling too much to, my Jesus as the Jesus, I think there are essential things that we can say about who Jesus is, right? But then there's also a lot of variance for how we understand that, and how different explorations and different depictions can help us to think more clearly and more deeply about who Jesus is. And, and it's the same kind of thing that we're going through in Star Trek. I just see that happening, that, yeah, maybe this particular Trek is not your Trek, but it is still Trek. It is still Star Trek, and it's good. And it's good to stretch. And even if you end up not liking the series, like I was saying last week, the characters are a gift. So I think.
I agree.
But yeah. What else were we talking about, possibly covering about seasons 1 and 2? We did talk about Pike there a little bit, which is good.
Yeah, touched on Pike.
Which I like. The other thing that you had mentioned is the concept of unity, and this is something that had come up in some things that I've been working on. But why don't you tell me what you had in mind regarding the concept of unity?
I'm not really sure. It was something that while I was watching the sermon this morning online, it kind of struck me as he was talking about, and it was a passage from Romans. I can't remember the chapter and verse or anything. But he was talking about, Christ calling us, that he was talking about the divisions that are that are so prevalent right now. To fall into those is to conform to the world, which is what we're called to not do. And it made me think of some of the stuff that Burnham and Pike kind of they go on about in some of their speeches towards the end of the seasons about, this is what we do. This is Starfleet. We're all in this together. We're a family. We're essentially, they're unified. And I like I said, I don't have much specifics. I'm not quite as deep into things as you are. But it just, the connection there kind of struck a chord with me. And I thought it might be something worth diving into.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a good connection, and it's something that's important in Star Trek, that if we don't get this right, I think I mentioned it last week or previous week, that people had talked about homogeneity, right? And and I've talked several times about the monoculture on different alien planets, where the whole planet all dresses the same and has the same religion and all that sort of thing. But then also the idea that that difference is not accommodated in the Starfleet or in the Federation. Like, and if that's the case, that's a homogeneity that works against Star Trek ideals, and that's really true. And anytime we see that, anytime we get a whiff of that, I think things are going in the wrong direction. Because we really do have unity and diversity. I mean, think about the crew of the Discovery, right? Especially as it comes to us in the first season, you have a captain who's human, and and a white guy, but who is not what we usually see from a captain, right? You have Burnham, who's kind of this weird outsider person too, but then you have Tilly, who's such a nerd, and And you have Saru, who's one of the most alien looking, alien acting aliens that we've had in Star Trek, you know?
Yeah.
And you have a couple of people with cybernetic implants. You have one person who is basically mostly cybernetic implants. And, you know, just a lot of difference, a lot of variety. Different races, different genders, different things, you know? You know, it's one of the more, it may be the most, I don't know. Depends on how you define diversity, right? But it's one of the more diverse casts in Star Trek. It's certainly pushing for that. And I think that's so great because the best unity, and I was reading stuff from C.S. Lewis about this too, that the best unity is not in everybody all being the same.
Right.
You know? Star Trek focuses much on the growth of the individual at its best, as much on the growth of the individual as the growth and the journey of the group. And they work together. The individual journeys and the group journeys work together. And, you know, and it may be, your pastor may have been talking about 1 Corinthians 12. I don't know.
No, it was from Romans.
It was from Romans.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking about the body, you know, one body in Christ. Paul talking about the body and saying that, you know, you're each members, right, of the body, but you're different. The body can't be a single eye.
Well, maybe it was Corinthians then.
Might have
sworn
been,
it was Romans.
Well, he does talk about it in Romans too. Looks like in Romans 12:5. Yeah, because I know this stuff off the top of my head. No, I looked it up.
There's that evangelical upbringing.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, it's the internet age is what it is. But just as one body we have many members, and not all the members serve the same function. So we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members who belong to one another, and we have different gifts according to the grace given to us. You know, so. That's in for those who are looking. Romans 12. Gosh, we never talk about like specific verses on this show. But it's in Romans 12, starting with verse 4-ish. But why not start at the beginning? Read the stuff in context, because, you know, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
But
context is for kings.
Yeah, right. Ooh, nice reference. Very good. It's, I think different people being themselves, being their different people, but working together toward the same goal. I think that's true unity. That's good unity. That's healthy unity. As opposed to the homogeneity, again, in Return of the Archons.
Star Wars does this too, you know, like you've got the desert planet Tatooine and the forest moon of Endor. Right. And what this is, I think, is it's more of a storytelling technique. It's like a fantasy setting, but expanded. Instead of the desert of mystery, now you have the desert planet of mystery, because you're traveling through the stars. So I don't know if it's an intentional effort to try and homogenize stuff so much as it is just that fantasy setting, making use of different sets, but on a grander scale.
Yes. I mean, that's absolutely what it is. And it serves a story function. It's so we can narrow our focus down to a particular type of person or a particular type of society or attitude or whatever. Right. Yes, absolutely. But when we have these long relationships with cultures like the Klingons or the Bajorans or whatever, you know, we want to start seeing some diversity. And I think Deep Space Nine has done that to a certain degree too, more than any other series for sure. But I just think, I mean, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but it is a thing that happens, and it's kind of part of the way the stories are told. But yeah, no, you're right. You're not wrong at all. I mean, that's definitely how it functions.
So, and there was something else I read kind of along this same topic, and it's played out in Undiscovered Country and in the first season of Discovery. These the Klingons fear that the Federation is making everybody like them.
Yes.
And from the outside, they don't understand the inside. They don't understand. They don't see these different parts maintaining their individualism, but still working for the greater whole.
Like in Star Trek 6, as Azitber says, when they're at the table, she says that the Federation is just a Homo sapiens only club. And Chekhov says, you know, we believe that, you know, everyone has inalienable human rights. And she says, in Alien, human rights, if you could just hear yourself talking, just like, yeah. And I think they're not wrong to fear that, in a lot of respects. They're not wrong to fear that, because it's a real danger. It's a real danger, even just in Starfleet and in the Federation as it is. And that's another thing I really like about the vision of the Federation. This is getting way off topic, but the vision of the Federation that is I can't think of the name of it right now. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it, but the sphere in Star Trek Beyond. I can't think. Yorktown.
Oh,
Yorktown.
Right. Yeah.
There's so much diversity in that. They put 50 different alien species in that.
Yeah.
In that one scene that's so short. It's just beautiful.
Well, no, I don't think this is far off topic. This whole topic of the Federation, I think what the Federation means, what Starfleet means, I think is the central theme to Discovery, especially looking at some of the trailers for the third season. I think Starfleet is what Discovery is going to be about. In the end, we'll look back at Discovery and...
Yes. Oh, I think you're onto something there. I think you're bang on. And it's all in that speech that Burnham gives, right? It's all in that speech about, this is Starfleet. We are Starfleet,
Right.
And talking about when everybody's getting the medals and everything, what is that, the end of season 2, I think?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was beautiful.
Gosh, it was so beautiful. And of course, and then again, you're just like, and this is why we love Michael. Because she has this in her.
I wonder... I kind of want to I hate confrontation. I avoid it like the plague, but I kind of want to challenge anyone who feels like Discovery is not Star Trek.
Yeah.
To watch that ending speech from Burnham as she talks about what Starfleet is. And I challenge them to watch that and to tell me that they still don't think it's Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're a Trekkie, you can't watch that without a tear coming to your eye. I mean, it's as opposed to in Star Trek Into Darkness, where they try to give us a tearjerker by turning the opening words of the original series into the captain's oath, and instead just completely turning us off, because everybody should know that there's nothing in that's even remotely an oath. I'm not bitter about Into Darkness, right? I'm not, but alternatively, you have Burnham's speech there at the end of Star Trek, at the end of season 2. So great, and the stuff with Georgiou and the telescope and Saru.
Oh my gosh!
In the first season, I mean, it's just, you may be like kind of going through the desert sometimes, waiting for those great Star Trek moments in Discovery, but it makes them all the more sweet because they feel earned. They feel real because they stand up and they're genuine against something that's been very, very difficult. And I love that. I absolutely love it.
I do too.
Yeah, it's great. And there again, I mean, that's, I've said before on the podcast that, like, when Star Trek gets too violent, when it gets too sexy, and when it swears too much, people get upset. And particularly Christians get upset about that stuff, because there are things that make people uncomfortable. And I always say, because I know a lot of Christians particularly are very sensitive about content, right? They're very sensitive about the kinds of things that they watch. I've told the story about selling a thing at the bookstore called the TV Guardian, which would bleep out the objectionable words and then put another word on the screen to filter the stuff for you. And I'm of the opinion that, if you want to watch The Wolf of Wall Street, but without all the sex and drugs and violence and foul language, you don't want to watch The Wolf of Wall Street. Go find another movie. Don't ask for that to be edited to your liking. Just go find another movie. If you want to watch The Wolf of Wall Street, you're going to see, you're going to hear the most F words ever in a movie, and it's a great movie. So either enjoy the great movie and not worry about the fact that it has all the F words in it, or go find another movie. But I say that not in a dismissive way. I say that, like, make active choices, because I know that there are people for whom certain things they don't want to hear, they don't want to watch,
Mm-hmm.
And so I do want to be conscious of that. And I don't want to say, oh, you should watch this anyway, even though that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's okay. If you have a conviction against watching certain things, fine. Don't watch those things. It's like the meat offered to idols thing,
Exactly.
It's certainly not anything that's a sin for me. It's certainly not anything that I have any moral or ethical problem with at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it might be for someone else. And so I'm just going to respect that and move on with life and not look down on somebody because they have a different set of standards than I do. Right. They're welcome to have their standards. But then don't get mad when people make things that don't meet your standards.
Right.
What you like to see in Star Trek, or whether you like it being TVMA or not, or whatever, people can make whatever they want to make. And they're not out there to make something that pleases your sensibilities. So if you don't like it, just don't watch it. Find something else to watch,
Exactly.
And or and watch the stuff that you do like enough that people want to make more of it because they make a lot of money on it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that money is the only motivator, but
it does talk.
It does talk. That's very true. Yeah.
You know what else is money? Time. And time we have gone over.
Oh, have we? Oh my gosh.
Yes. And it was good conversation. Did we talk about everything we wanted to talk about?
Oh, no, not even close.
Oh.
I mean, we didn't talk about Tilly. We didn't talk about list every other character in Discovery.
Well, I mean, we've had 2 seasons of Discovery and an hour and a half total of time across all of our podcast episodes to talk about it.
True. So we'll talk about these things more as we get into season 3.
And I'm sure at some point in season 3 there'll be a Tilly episode that allows us to dive more into her from the first and second seasons, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be plenty to get into, I think.
Yeah. We'll get there. We'll get there. So I hope everybody enjoyed listening to this one. It was a little off the wall, but we just wanted to do a flyover of season 1 and 2 before we got into season 3.
Can't stop talking about how much I love Discovery. I'm so excited, more so because of the conversion that I've had with it. It's just all the sweeter having come around to it.
Yeah. And gosh, that's true of a lot of things, isn't it?
I
don't want to ping too hard on the word conversion, but I mean that's true. I've just been reading, which I highly recommend to our audience, a book called The Narnian.
Oh, I thought you were going to recommend reading. I'm like, yes,
I do recommend reading. But there's a book called The Narnian, and if it intimidates you, get the audiobook, or because it's kind of big, but it's great. It's absolutely great. It's a biography of C.S. Lewis. And it's really interesting to see him because he described himself, and he definitely was a reluctant convert, and very much, and just to see how I identified a lot with the fervency of his faith because he had questioned it so deeply, because he was so much opposed to it before he, before he arrived at logical conclusions, but then also had an emotional process and that caused him to believe that the story of Christ is real. And I've gone through similar kinds of processes myself, and just kind of like, hardcore questioning. So I think
it's like I keep saying, if you haven't questioned your faith, it isn't yours.
Exactly. Absolutely. Because you don't hold it; it holds you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not to, like I said, not to dial in too hard, but anyway. Yeah.
All right. So did we have a question, or were we going to talk about the new format coming up?
We're going to do both.
Okay.
So this is kind of a nerd question, and I love nerdy questions. But the question was about the episode "Who Mourns for Adonais?" And yes, it is Adonais, not Adonai, not Adonis, not Adonais. It's Adonais. And it's based
Adonais.
That's good. No, it's Adonais, which you may recognize as a title that people call Jesus. It's just a Greek word for Lord, Adonai. And so it takes its title from a poem, and there's a long story behind it. But it's the episode where they are on the planet with Apollo, right? And Apollo wants them to worship him. And they ultimately gain victory over Apollo and are released from the planet. This is in the original series, obviously. They gain victory over Apollo, they drain his power source or whatever, and he has to leave, right? And he goes on and he has this speech about passing on to be with the other gods who, long ago have left Earth and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And Kirk has this musing at the end where he's like, would it have hurt us, I wonder, to have gathered only a few laurel leaves? Like, they gave us so much. The Greeks and their gods and all that, they gave us so much of our history, so much of our culture is built on Greek civilization. Would it have hurt us, I wonder, to have gathered a few laurel leaves? And gathering laurel leaves being, as an act of worship. Mm-hmm. And, this person's wondering about this musing at the end of this episode. Like, what do I make of that? And they were asking, what does that mean? Would it have hurt us to have gathered even a few laurel leaves? And I honestly don't know what to make of it. I'll be honest. It's an odd little note at the end, because I think about this quotation from Pier Paolo Pasolini, who was an Italian film director, and he directed one of the great Jesus films called Evangelo secondo Matteo, the Gospel according to Matthew, or the Gospel according to Saint Matthew, as it's usually sold in English, and from 1964. And he said, if you know I am an atheist, then you know me better than I know myself. Like, he had a reputation as an atheist. And he said, I may not be a believer, but I have a nostalgia for a belief. And I feel that a lot in Gene Roddenberry, that nostalgia for a belief. And I wonder if that's kind of what's going on in the scene, that Kirk is expressing a bit of a nostalgia for a belief, or a nostalgia for a time and place, and just saying, this is a being still. This isn't a fantasy. And this idea, it's this whole chariots of the gods concept, that the gods are actually aliens, that there were real beings that the gods are based on, and they're alien beings who came to Earth, which is, it is what it is. But it's kind of baked into Star Trek. We do that a lot.
Yeah.
A little too much. And and so this is a being, and you kind of have pity for him when he's having to leave and feeling so despondent, like his life is over. And he says, I wonder if it would have hurt us to have gathered just a few laurel leaves. Like, could we still give him a little bit of honor? Could we still make him feel good just for a few minutes, just for a little while, Mm-hmm. Would it really have hurt us? And I don't know the answer to that question, in all honesty. And I think maybe it comes more down to, could we have dealt with this a different way? Was there a sort of a diplomatic solution? We might consider this being's feelings, consider this being's ancientness, right? I don't know if it's a word, but whatever. And maybe have done something to make him feel accommodated, to make him feel that we understand that we do owe him something. We do owe the Greek civilization something. We do owe that pantheon of gods something, because it did help form who we are as a people. Mm-hmm. Assuming that in the 23rd century the Western civilization is dominant, but right. But moving on.
Yeah, that's a pretty big assumption. Right,
that's a big assumption. Yeah, but that's the idea, And it's like, and I wonder if that might be sort of a diplomatic, a moment where Kirk would say, maybe I could have had a different diplomatic approach than just digging in my heels and saying no. Because mm-hmm. because we're averse to worshiping, gods or whatever of it. And, he doesn't say we're averse to worshiping gods. Actually, in that episode, he says, mankind has no need for gods. We find the one quite adequate, which is another little wonky saying in Star Trek that we don't know what to do with, because we don't know who the one is. But it is a curious thing. It is a curious moment in Star Trek. And I don't ever want to take one moment in Star Trek and make it too big, like that. We find the one quite adequate. I mean, it's a chapter. It's a chapter title in my book, but that line and the sun up in the sky and different lines from the original series. I think Christians do sometimes make too much of. A lot of people will make too much of one line or another line, mm-hmm. Especially if it doesn't reverberate throughout Star Trek. But it is an interesting moment. It is a moment that puzzles me, and I kind of want to read it more about another way of diplomacy that we could have taken, another kind of questioning our actions, even if we don't question our motives, which I think is a good thing to do. I don't know if that's why it was written that way or not, but or is it a nod to, hey, maybe there is some value to some religion, maybe a little bit of it isn't too bad. Like, I don't even know. But I really don't think, in principle, I don't think it's good to offer false worship to anybody, to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that.
Where does that fit into the meat to idols?
Meat to idols.
Yeah, the meat to false idols.
It's not about offering the meat to the idols. It's about eating the meat that had been offered to idols. That was the controversy.
Fair.
So it's not about like, no, you should not offer the meat to the idols. No.
Right.
And also you shouldn't do that falsely. You shouldn't do that falsely to curry favor or whatever. Pretend to worship something you don't worship or anything like that. I don't think that's good either. But there again, I think Kirk has a bead on something that it would be interesting to see how Jean-Luc handled that situation. We could say that about a lot of Kirk stories.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my best answer that I can give you for that. So thanks for the question. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I do want to say that next week is going to be a little weird. I know I usually ask you what's coming on next week, but I want to tell the folks at home, because this was the season finale of Lower Decks. We are next week going to start talking about season 3 of Discovery, and the position people may have noticed that I've started putting timestamps on everything in the description, so you know which part of the episode is what. And next week I'm going to be putting that to full advantage, hopefully, because we're going to be moving the Discovery episode up to where the Lower Decks episode normally is. We might talk about it a little longer than we talk about a Lower Decks episode. But then when we get to the main story, my hope is that in the main story section, we can start digging into other Star Trek on purpose, not new Star Trek, but older Star Trek on purpose in order to diversify what we're doing in the podcast. And it might link in with the Discovery episode. So I'm not sure how certain I will be in advance of each week's theme. We're going to see how things go with this first episode of the new season of Discovery and see what happens. That's my plan. That's my hope. But what you can do is just utilize that list of timestamps and decide what part of the episode you want to listen to. And hopefully there'll be some older Star Trek stuff in there for people who are more interested in that. And we'll try to diversify the podcast a little bit. But that's the plan. And there you go. So, Tim, what's next week look like for us?
Well, next week we're going to diversify the episode a little bit and change things up. I don't know. You pretty much.
I pretty much stole your thunder, didn't I?
Yeah, you took it from me.
You
did my job. What am I even here for?
I don't know. I asked myself the same question, and then you kicked me, which is interesting because we're not even in the same room. So, all right. So, yeah. All right. Obviously,
that sounds great. I hope you'll join us. No.
You want to do my lines? Yeah. So obviously, we're gonna get into season 3 next week, and I'm so excited about it. And I hope everyone will join us. Also, in the meantime, please like, share, rate, comment, and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, go ahead and ring the bell for notifications. And also, please send your questions. We love getting them. Gospel According to Star Trek on Twitter and Facebook, or gospeltrekpodcast@gmail.com. I would absolutely love to discuss your question on the next show. Tim,
fantastic.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to say to the folks at home, Tim?
I just want to say, if you're thinking about changing your hair color, remember that it's always a good day to die.
That's beautiful. I love it. Well, that's with that sage advice, that wonderful, the old Klingon proverb that
turns out they were talking about hair coloring this whole time.
Talking about hair coloring this whole time.
Maybe they're born with it.
Maybe so. Maybe it's Maybelline. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time,
I'm Tim Van Orden.
And I'm Kevin Seamies. And as Jesus said in John 10:10, live long and prosper.
See you next time.